For 2 weeks this summer, the most capable AI model on the planet, the Mythos, the Fable 5, went dark, completely dark. It became contraband if you still had access into it or were creating solutions with it. This summer, the U.S. government took a look at this frontier model and said that it needed to have export restrictions. It needed to have some more boundaries around it, needed to have more guidelines. So for roughly 2 weeks, the model went dark. It was kind of funny because we had access to it. A bunch of us were actually experimenting with it. I was about to record a video and had put together the script of what I was going to record for a video on it hours before the application got pulled offline. So the Commerce Department was then wrangling with the producer, Anthropic, and a lot of back and forth. They were able to get the guidelines worked out. They were able to get the model back online. But during this period, it did teach us a lot about what is going on with these frontier models and what's going on in this space. Made us think quite a bit about what we're putting dependency on. Let's think of it this way. What if that model had been out a little bit longer and we had workloads that had been working on this model? What if we were depending on the Fable 5 as a key component of some of our technology? Where would we be if we had a healthcare application that was using the logic of Fable 5 to orchestrate other sub-agents and everything underneath of it, and then all of a sudden it is out, poof, it's gone. So this is something that has brought to light the 14 days of this model being offline. That roadmap did not belong to Anthropic. That roadmap did not belong to us as the users. It belonged to the negotiators of where this was going. The CEO of Anthropic and the cabinet secretary were the ones working it out. We were all left in the dark. So if your patient experience depends on a vendor relationship and you're locked into one single vendor, one regulator, one piece, it's best to have a fallback mechanism to make sure that you're able to react in case something you're depending on has a middle agent here, like the federal government, pull the plug. So this is a very, very important thing to think about and to build around. But Fable 5 is now online. It's a very interesting model. It has a lot of increased functionality, but also has a lot of increased token costs. So it is one that is thinking more, a little deeper. It is definitely more than the Opus models were. So it is something for you to definitely take a look at, but it is not the model that should be your go-to right now for any and everything. You'll burn up the tokens very quickly. Make sure that you're using it for what it needs to be, which is building deep plans, building the layer to orchestrate other sub-agents. That's a great way of using it. That is something you might want to consider doing with it. That is something we're going to plan on doing with it now that it's out in the space. So what else does the Fable 5 saga teach us about the healthcare space and AI? For me, it brought to mind two types of sovereignty. The first is going to be data sovereignty, where we operate in the BAA space. We all keep track of where the bytes live, who can subpoena them, what the BAA says. Healthcare is actually above many other fields in this space. Because this industry has had HIPAA, it has forced us to think about this for about 20 years. We think about it. It's also why so many healthcare companies, it's kind of that big push, which is we won't put everything into the cloud. Oh, wait a minute. What about if it's out on the cloud and X, Y, and Z? That is kind of where that sovereignty comes in. But now I want us to start thinking about, not just the bits and bytes of the PII and the data that we're putting over there. Let's start thinking about intellectual sovereignty or intellectual property. Is a newer idea that the whole tech industry right now is thinking about and spending a lot of time. Something I'm going to be researching more here over the summer. The first couple weeks of summer with this has become very important. Basically, who controls the model, the weights, the compute, the entire aspect around it. Is it the fact that you're working with Anthropic, but have they handed this data over to NVIDIA? Are your data subsets because of a relationship heading over to Palantir? It is something that we need to think about. So this BAA is important for where the bits and bytes of this stored data goes, but also for our intellectual property, that sovereign information out there of what is the customer information, the customer data, whose hardware is it on, who owns the data, and are models being trained off of data I'm giving them? Is a partnership between a couple of companies allowing the data to be used in ways that I would rather not right now. So here's the argument that every boardroom is having right now, and I want you to hear it, even if only half of you agree. These frontier labs, which are going to be your ChatGPT, your Anthropics, all those, at the model layer, they keep looking and expanding into other verticals. I know in my last webinar on this last month, I was actually talking about Anthropic for healthcare and some of these. Now, that has gotten some people asking me a lot of questions because they're going, wait a minute, what does this mean? It sounds like a great thing. Anthropic for healthcare. Sounds like Salesforce for Health Cloud. It's something tailored. But does that mean that the data could be shared from my organization into the model? We were talking about coding, design, legal, finances, science, all types of information that are landing inside of these models, and who has the ownership and the control. The thing that also came about that got me thinking, and it's got a lot of other people in the space thinking about this, is Anthropic worked with a company called Figma and had great plugins, great skills, great integrations. And next thing you know, there's Claude Design, which has eaten about 50% of Figma's market share. It's a great product. I kind of like it. I am untalented. I can't use hardly half the things that people can do in Canva and inside Figma and some of these. But with Claude Design, I can instruct the LLM to create nice looking layouts and pieces and put things together in a way I hadn't thought about. So yes, it's not exactly the same thing, but where I think Figma was going was they were taking the Anthropic tool and putting it inside their tool so that I would go to Figma to do this. And Anthropic side of that joint venture, relation, whatever they had together, this is kind of like a divorce. It's messy. It's not fun, but it is a situation there where Claude is now competing against Figma. It really reminds me of how so many people put their products out on Amazon to find that there's an Amazon Basics version of it. So you come up with a great idea, you're selling 1 million units of it through Amazon, and Amazon goes, oh, we like this. We're going to make an Amazon Basics of that widget and put it in our store under our own branding. So where does this relate to healthcare, fintech, and the space we work to? Now let's let me translate it to our world on this. Your clinical protocols, your payer negotiation, which is what we talked about, your payer history, your decade of denial and appeals and outcomes, your revenue cycle management, this is your IP. So this is information in the life science space that is considered proprietary. Normally, it is stuff, when somebody calls you up and says, tell me about the amount of denials to appeals and everything, and it's a marketing company, you're never going to tell them. You're going to shut the door. You're never going to talk to them. You get a phone call from a company that is trying to sell you a piece of software. Again, unless they can help you grow it, you might at that point start, but that's your intent, and you know that. But what I see going on, these labs have, is they're opening the door saying, come in and play with Claude for healthcare. Well, you're putting proprietary data into Claude for healthcare. Those data sets get vertically shared. They're anonymized, so you're not having the PII, but you're not having the outcomes of that PII get shared into that pool if you're not careful. And a lot of reasons what they're doing is they're going, well, we're giving you early access. Well, the reason they want you to have early access is they're using that data. So there's a saying in technology space, when something is free, we, the consumer, are the product. That's how those apps on our iPhones work. If it's a free app on an iPhone, it's normally we're the product. Our data is what we're using to pay with it instead of $1.99. So, but let's think about this. Let me be the adult in the room. So, I have watched this argument get people take people to the wrong conclusion. The honest position is not never touch a frontier model. That's not the right thing. So it is really, let's figure out the way to use the frontier models and to keep our data proprietary. Make sure that everything being done is under a BAA. I know I talked a lot about how to or why to avoid some of these Chinese models. Well, some of these Chinese models today, DeepSeek Quinn, that are open source, that are now running on our own hardware on a dedicated instance, are doing less stealing because they've been hardened and are put on our own equipment than a frontier model has the potential. I'm trying to keep myself out of a legal situation here. It is one of those things that I think needs to be looked at very deeply as we go down this AI realm, and need to look at what can we do to make sure that our data sovereignty is in the spectromosphere that we're controlling, and that we are using the workloads deliberately. I mean, we're not giving over too much data. We are giving over the data for that piece. So we're writing the rules kind of separately into a skill, into the LLM to help us, but we may not be giving it all the secret sauce. It kind of reminds me, a couple years ago, I had a couple of widgets inside of a very popular used CRM system. And a person that was an integrator, that joint venture and stuff we worked with, hey, Eric, dump me a copy of that production information. I want to tune the integration. It was just a small ask and everything. And hey, I just want to tune on it a little bit, make a few modifications, blah, blah, blah. Time goes by. Next thing I know, that piece, along with a couple other pieces, are being put out into that similar platform in a similar way. And it wasn't worth the dollars for me to chase. But boy, they didn't steal any information because I'm the idiot who handed it over. But the information felt wrong when I saw what was clearly my architecture, my work product, my table designs, my IDs, my primary keys, my foreign keys, all being into somebody else's technology, and I had nothing to do with it. I was now out of the loop. That is what I am worried about. It's happening in the AI world, and instead of a human being, in that case, being nice and friendly and southern and saying, "Hey, hand it over, bro," it's coming off now that it's a little more strong-armed and it's a little bit in the fine print of the legal document. So that is something that we definitely want to look at. So let's look at what I'm going to call the IP, the sovereignty, the layer spectrum with these AIs. So I want to create the full picture here. 4 different levels. I guess I'll talk at tier 0, the least, which is going to be, this is pure chat. This is when you're a not logged in account. You're just going into the chat app. Don't ever put PII into that level. So this is, you can draft some email responses. You can draft some intermediate stuff. This is consumer level. This is not something that you want to be doing in a healthcare space and have any type of PII or proprietary, and then just that generic. Tier 1 is what I call the baseline, Tier 1 for a healthcare company. And this is going to be an enterprise account, work group account, plus the BAA in place. So if you're working with a frontier model, get the BAA. You want zero retention inside the configuration. You want audit logging. You want to know who is asking what, touching what, all of that. This is your workhorse tier. So this is where you start off and can then start using the AI to help you in your automation processes, like we talked in the last episode, and build those skills. Tier 2 is one that I think is going to be today something that is in most of your future, but it's something you're not going to think about. This is speaking to 1% of the people out there. This is your dedicated virtual container. So this is an isolated capacity, your cloud tenancy. So you're putting it into your Azure, you're putting it into your AWS, your keys, your region, your high sensitivity workload. So that is tier 2. Tier 3 is something we already play with, and you probably have heard me talk a little bit about, which is where we have our own local LLM. This is where you get into that maximum amount of protection. You're taking an open model, you're taking an off-the-shelf model, you're running it on your hardware, your controls, your weights, your logs, your hard drives connected to it, and you now have the control over what is happening when you don't want to learn off of it. Boom, power down, it's gone. If you want to keep the inferences that it has, write them out to memory files, and have it use them over and over and over again. So these 4 tiers, are not an absolute, but I would say the absolute is don't put PHI unless you got a BAA into it. So that's kind of the only one there. But 2 years ago, the tier 3 was considered only for the uber geeks who had GPUs and were willing to build hardware boxes. Now I am seeing devices like DGX Spark and other ones that are coming out from people with Mac Minis running OpenClaw. These type of things, these open weight models, these open weight automations are becoming good. They're coming more mature. The economics are starting to shift because of token cost to where it is effective to buy and to put up a piece of hardware like that and to bring that into the fold. It is not science fiction anymore. It is not only for the uber geeks. It is something that I think a lot of healthcare enterprises should put in their 2027 budget, is some allocation to buy some of your own hardware, at least to get your internal teams utilizing it, getting up to speed, and figuring out what they can do in a more protected, but also in a more reliable. So I would say that don't plan on transferring more than like 30% of your workload over there. At best, I know it's going to be a big CapEx expense, but 70% of the AI workloads today are primary type functions in an enterprise today, where 20% is kind of a situation where if it happens via AI, it has a fallback and is fine if it fails or runs later. That is going to restructure, and the availability and the costing of that high availability is going to become more and more important. So that is where I think that what we need to do is look at what tiers we are putting these things into, separate them up. And here's a chart on the healthcare workloads and the recommended tiers that we're kind of talking about. So I would go ahead and look at how I can think about having in that budget. And when I say tier 3, that is your hardware. So that tier 3 down there at the bottom, this is when the architecture is on your gear and it does not leave. So one quick note, is that this information here is always changing. So let's keep in mind that this is one of those that a couple of shifts in the space, and next thing you know, this could be a feature where I am suggesting that 10% of the healthcare companies out there go and buy this hardware immediately and stop putting it if we have another Fable 5 type of thing happening out in the space. So, what is the expected shift over the next couple months? Today, your clients, your patients, book their flight via voice. They bank via an iPhone or Android app. They get same-day answers in every aspect of their life except for one, the doctor's office. The doctor's office is one of those locations where we still are waiting. My chart has made it a lot better to get that information out, but there is a lot of high-touch type of questions that happen when you're dealing with healthcare that need to be specialized, need to be organized, need to be done in such a way that you're thinking about all of the responses. So that's why there's a lot of criticality around this, and complete, honestly, there's a lot of complexity around it. But that is where we need to weave the technology in with the patient journey so that the AI is monitoring what is going on. It has a long time to learn. It has that human in the loop. It is running in parallel and running its responses by somebody. So here, human, review what I'm about to say. Is this right? Is this wrong? And the human actually has to do that. But the other thing about it is you can also have the human doing the responses and see if it matches what the AI does and see what that delta is. So you can monitor behind the scenes in parallel. So, one thing that I do as an exercise when we're looking at healthcare is to pick up the phone and call the healthcare provider that we're working with, their main line after hours, and see how things are being dealt with. See what the answers are, see what the layers of the menu are, because sometimes, I hate to say it, in IT, many times we're recommending the phone system, we're not checking back up on it. Now when we're looking at the data, we need to make sure that things are flowing right. One of the audits that I did, just about 2 years ago, called in the after hours, had 4 confusing layers to the menu. A couple of them ran to a dead end. One of the main voicemail boxes was full, which was an important one. So when we talk about how to make sure we have the best patient journey, that is one of those things that is not easy to keep up with. So now what I would do is I would write an agent to keep and check the mailbox structure every day. I want to know that is being looked at. I don't want the patient experience to be cumbersome. I don't want the patient experience to be clunky and bulky. I don't want the patient experience to have to rely on the EHR. I want it to be something that feels like how they are treated when they're in office with humans in that after-hour situation. So this is where bringing things like voice AI in is a good low-bar area to bring things in. It is also an area where you can get good use of AI and off-the-shelf technologies and dip your toe in the water in that 70% area of lift that is going to get you a good result. So here's where voice AI can or escape. I got another chart for you here. Scheduling and rescheduling, refill request line, these type of things, the after hours. But another piece of this that I would do is from the IT people that might come across this, or if you're forwarding it over to them, have them look at how to monitor the mailboxes by using voice AI to interpret what the phone system is doing and doesn't meet the baseline. So it is going to be one of those things that you can have it do. If you notice what is not on the list, diagnosis, triage decisions, clinical advice, The voice agent is a world-class receptionist, not a clinician. I am not suggesting that AI replace the clinician today. We're at the moment where I know that a lot of people are using, we used to refer to Dr. Google as a great advisor to people's health. Now ChatGPT, people are feeding in their diagnoses into it to see what it is. That is a huge liability zone. I am not suggesting any of my partners and people we work with get inside of that realm. It is still very early. I've offered this advice 2-3 times. When working with vendors, you might have it lightly assess some symptoms and put that into it, but should you? So this is one of those things that should you be having it make that assessment, because in medical there is a lot of other asterisks, and it could be one of those things that you have a good guardrails, you think, but it may or may not be as robust as what it needs to be to keep everything compliant, to keep everything legal, and to keep it from making a bad decision and causing you millions of dollars from a malpractice claim. It is one of those elements. Now, the other thing that we need to keep in mind when we're using these voice agents, your audio becomes PHI the instant the name and the health condition merge into your data. So if you know that Eric Garrison has high blood pressure, I am now PHI data. I just put PHI data into YouTube and Zoom by just saying that. Every decision that you make, you need to think about what questions you're asking, how you're collecting that data, and whether I have jumped into that PHI realm. I know there's a lot of marketing people out there who say, well, when they're on the website and the marketing and filling out forms, they're not. I said, at the moment they tell you what they need because of a condition, that is a different situation. So that is where us using AI, we have to have that BAA in place. Our technology needs to now be up to the level of HIPAA and making sure that we're following all of the proper escalations, SLAs, tracking, everything that comes along with reading. So, and let's not even start about GDPR. That's something also I have been working with a number of companies on. Making sure that you have that right to erase. That is something that comes from GDPR. It's not actually a bad thing to have also, is that cleanup process in here in US. So that's something to think about. I've spent a couple minutes kind of scaring you and talking about the pitfalls of AI. And this is a very important piece I want to talk about, which is the why you need to be doing AI in your organization. And I'm going to display some data up on the screen here. This data comes from a Stanford report, a Stanford paper that also worked with a expense tracking company called Ramp. Ramp is a company we work with frequently, as well as data from Revelto Labs. So the companies came together, they analyzed a bunch of data and are looking at the spending trends, the tracking. So Ramp is tracking the amount that they're spending on AI and tokens. They're also able to look at things such as where the companies are going. And there's some important numbers that we're going to put up on the screen here a couple of times. But one thing that is very important that this report, and I encourage you to Google it and go look at it yourself. I don't want to plagiarize somebody, plus it's kind of long, but I'll give you the highlights of it. So key finding number one, companies that adopt AI are hiring more, not fewer people. That is a trend that we hear the media talking about, the firing of AI. But the companies that are executing and doing it right are actually hiring more people. Why are they hiring more people? It is because they need those humans to become like data collectors and data interfacers and are making them more productive. So it's not what anybody expected. Entry-level hiring is growing even faster. So the entry-level positions are growing at 12%, which is higher than it even expected. The growth rate of companies, and we're talking about a large number of firms being tracked here. So we're talking about 21,000 firms being looked at. 10.2% of them that have adopted AI are having in year 2, they are increasing. So the gains are showing up above the threshold of what what everybody was expecting. And that what this is telling us is that these are great indicators that the adopters and the people, not just those that are dipping their toe in the water, but those that are putting significant types of investment into this are gaining significant types of returns. They're growing their organizations, they're growing their headcounts, they're growing their businesses. So there is a steep learning curve to this, but it does show that if you stick it out and iterate and go into that year 2, the headcount gains are growing a little further out on the tail. So what you're seeing is start adopting AI, start gaining the results, and now you're starting to get that increase. So, and that is something that is being seen in a lot of organizations. I know a lot of technology people. So I was talking with a CEO at another tech company in the healthcare space, and they're about to do the same thing. They thought that they were going to be able to do a lot of what they were doing without having to grow headcount, but they've brought in such an amount of new business that they have to grow the headcount, because now their headcount gains, are going to be able to help them orchestrate quicker. So the AI is allowing them to turn around the contracts quicker and get quotes out faster, get their marketing done better, and that has brought in new business. I know it has for what we do as well. We're able to turn things around much quicker by the use of a lot of our AI stacks. So let's connect the dots. You create your AI pilot. You might end up in that purgatory. That was one of the episodes that we did here. Don't let that AI pilot die. It is one of those things that needs to be refined. There might be times where you have to pull the plug, but don't let it die. Let the 90-day period work itself out, and let the technology people work the data and struggle to get the data cleaned up, because everybody we're finding, their data is not in the shape. So the time it takes to put together a great KPI dashboard, to put together some great AI to fix things, you can't pull the plug and do it all at once. It is one of those things that has to have a precision to the curve, where you need to take those little bitty increases and keep going along the curve to get those type of results. So the thing that I would say is that I don't believe, let's bring this home. Healthcare doesn't have a layoff problem. It has the opposites. Vacancies you can't fill, burnout that you can't stem, and the front desk turns over every let's say 18 months is kind of the typical. And that same Triangle COO I was talking to mentioned these numbers are things, if you can make any type of dent in this, it costs so much to retrain somebody. If you can make the front desk operator's job a little easier and turn that 18 months into just 24 months, that's an EBITDA gain. If you can turn that 18 months into 36 months, that's a big EBITDA gain. So it is one of those, if you can make that front desk operator's life a little bit easier, which is some of the skills we talked about, in the last episode, it is going to help with the retention, not just with them. Med refill people, any type of the paperwork, going from paper forms to e-forms. You can't hire people fast enough to keep up with the demand. And a lot of these healthcare organizations, the people that you need are across the board, and you're struggling because you can't hire this provider because you need this other support staff to support that provider. Now you can relieve some of that burden to be able to bring on some more of those providers, and probably allow you to go out and get good, better talent. So the winning combination isn't instead of Denise, that's the person we picked on last time. It's Denise with an agent handling her task. It's giving Denise these skills so that she can do in 10 minutes what would take her an hour previously. It is going to let her take 17 refill phone calls instead of 6 in the same amount of time. It allows free to catch up on what she actually needs to do, because there's probably 10 things you don't even realize that she does. She's staying late and having to do that we can't automate. It's that soft work that can't be done inside of a computer. That doing the computer work will definitely help out. So here is a quick chart I'll put up as well, which here are some, your 30, 60, 90 type of things that you can do. If you want to screen capture this, go ahead. This is the type of thing that in a organization, as you see, the pilot at $30 an employee is kind of our average. That's not a bad way of doing it, but let's look at how we can bring in some activities here that will make for a good lift. And let's set the expectation with your board on day one. In writing with what you're going to do. Make them aware of what you're trying to do. Every client we work with, we try to do this. We set the board expectation. Board's not always easy to deal with. That's where we have to go to get the money in a lot of companies. So what we have found is it's best to bring them in and set the expectation that we're doing. And the terminology I always use is the run, walk, crawl. And sorry, I blew that. That's crawl, walk, run. The board wants the run, walk, crawl type model is kind of the joke on that. So they like that easy button and for you to shoot out of the gate as fast as humanly possible on a project. Why off-the-shelf packages feel good? You buy it. You're going to start the implementation. It's not customized. It's going to take a lot. That's sometimes why bespoke solutions are a little bit better. But it's one of those things. If you work with the boards and you can let them know up front that this is a 6-month, not a 6-week type of project, and set those expectations, I think that's where a lot of the early adopters of AI did themselves some disservice and created some industry problems by not doing that. And 3 things I'll tell you to take away here, and we will go into questions. One, think about your data IP, your what data you're putting out. Every place that you allow your data to go, be deliberate. And number 2, don't lock your AI strategy into any single vendor. Look at how you can use multi-vendor. It'll help you with token management. It'll help you with the situation of one going down, you can fall back to another. Or when a model that you're heavily reliable on falls out of favor, or you find that it's not working the way that it needs to, you're going to be easier when you design and architect this way to be able to flip to another one. And number 3 is the layoff algorithm. Don't go into this thinking we're going to eliminate a whole bunch of people's jobs. Think about how you can check up on them, make what they're doing easier, make what you're doing better, make the outcomes better. Let's work for better outcomes. And let's see if some of you can become those companies that are adding 10, 12% headcount because of AI, because of your business growing. We're very happy. We're working in a non-regulated space right now where a company we have been working with for a couple of years has doubled their business and now 2.5 times X on top of that doubling here for this current year. And so much of that has to do with the technology. We put the right pieces of technology in. We did some good betas. We are working with the people. I heard a new term, the undesk. Those are the people that don't have a desk. They're the ones that are always on their feet. They're out in the world running. They're using the phone, they're using the tablets, but giving them the solutions to pull up data as if they have a keyboard and mouse in front of them, like we all do, is very important. So thanks for watching this episode. We're going to now go into the Q&A. Hope everybody has got some good ones for me here.